The concept of visioning is like an accordion. You can expand it or you can contract it. So if you are listening to this and you're thinking, wow, all that sure sounds fine and well to be thinking about 5 years, 3 years in the future, but I don't even know what's going to happen in the next 5 days, let alone the next 5 hours. Like this feels very irrelevant to me. And very often I just need to focus on getting through this round of interviews or this career transition or this merger or whatever. Know that you can take that tool of visioning, ask yourself, what is my definition of success for this specific point in the future? Keep that in your back pocket. You can use it today. You can use it for a hard conversation. You can use it for an interview. You can use it now.
Welcome to the Your Next Move podcast, the show for high-performing professionals who want to be seen for their brilliance, speak with influence, and accelerate their path to leadership. I'm your host, Kimberly Brown, international career and leadership expert, keynote speaker, and best-selling author of Next Move, Best Move. Lois, welcome to the Your Next Move podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, so we had a little pre-interview conversation, and I'm clearly going to go to Madrid and visit you. That's next on the list. I'll figure out when I'm coming back and I will be there.
Perfect. 100% yes.
Yes. So for my listeners who are meeting you for the first time, and technically this is my first time meeting you too, I would love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do and who you are.
Amazing. So my name is Lois Weinblatt, and I am a vision coach and the founder of True North Visionaries. And I work with people, capable, motivated, self-aware people who are in a transition and they are wrestling with these really big questions about what's next in their career, what's next in their life. And they can tell they're sort of on that cusp of that next phase. And they are really struggling with what that looks like. And they just have so many thoughts swirling around in their head. And they just want a way to get them out of their head onto paper, process them, really understand them, and use that to help them gain clarity on what that next chapter looks like. So that's what I do.
I loved when I was reading your pitch and reading about you, when you talked about that cusp. I think that so many high achieving professionals, and you've used that type of language in your marketing too, it's not folks who like literally don't know what to do and they're sitting on the ground doing nothing. It's like, no, no, no. They're moving, they're grooving. It's just the cusp of the next level. When I've had so many intake calls with coaches, I've always explained it like almost like getting to like the horizon. Like I just can't see over the tip, but I'm right there. I know I
Yes.
can get to the tip, like whatever that hill, the mountain is, like I can see it, I can get there. I have the tools, I have all the things, but I'm like, I'm not sure like what's after, but I know it's good. I just have to like take that step and get to the peak. And I love
Yes.
when you talked about that. I was like, oh my gosh, that's, I may be a client.
Yes.
So when I was reading through all your things, you talked about when you were 25, you locked yourself in a room with snacks for an entire weekend to write your personal vision. Can you walk us through what led you to that moment and what made you realize that you needed clarity beyond just career planning?
Yes, yes. So I was working at this incredible organization called Zingerman's in my hometown of Ann Arbor, Michigan. And you wouldn't think like this whole visioning thing started with a bunch of Reuben sandwiches and, smelling like dill pickles all day, but I was working with them and they are this incredible business because they've grown through this philosophy of vision and everything they do starts there. So literally, I mean, they're launching a new product, they're going into a new sales training, they're doing their annual planning, and their question is always, what's the vision? And that resonated with me. It struck me so, so, so much because, in other companies, people will be saying, okay, so how do we increase sales? And they'll say, okay, well, we could do this, 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 this. At Zingerman's, you say, how do you increase sales? And they're like, well, what's the vision? So just that sort of default to answering the question with another question and really bringing everything back to that concept of visioning first was sort of deep within my bones, having worked with them. And then, like you said, when I was 25, I was at this crossroads thinking about all these different career paths and thinking about my visions for what that could look like. And at some point, I just realized I'm on this cusp of this incredibly transformative half decade of my life from 25 to 30 years old. And what do I want my life to look like when I'm 30? And if I don't clarify that for myself, like I will, I'm so grateful. I have such an amazing support system that I will have a great life. I will have a fine life, but I don't want just a fine life. I want it to be juicy and messy, and I want to get in there and really make it happen and not just let it happen. And so that was that moment where I just remember thinking, if I don't clarify this now, next year, I'll be fine, but nothing will really have changed. And that was just not willing to go down that road. And so, like you said, locked myself in the room and sort of had, even though I had learned about visioning from an organizational perspective, knew that I could turn that inward and really think about my own definition of success for this next chapter. And so I wrote and wrote and wrote and asked myself a ton of questions, like the really good, scary, meaty, amazing, exciting questions. And at the end of the weekend, I had peeled back all those layers and really clarified for 5 years from that day what I wanted my life to look like personally, professionally, financially, spiritually, in my relationships. And it was super exciting and relieving. And I also was like, I never want anyone to have to do this alone. So that is the kernel of what I'm doing now.
Oh my goodness. I think that's so beautiful. And I think I'm happy that we're starting to hear more about this. So in the entrepreneur community, I know on my feed, everybody's reading the 10x versus 2x. And a lot of that is getting clear on your 10x vision. When I kicked off the year in a coaching program I'm a part of, the founder was saying, I'm going to give you an exercise. And most of you aren't even going to do it. He's like, but I'll tell you the difference. He talked about being an ultra performer, like people who are top performers versus ultra performers. Ultra performers have a vision. And for him, he's like, I want you to do this 10-year vision. He's like, that's what ultra performers have. And all of their decisions go through the 10x vision. But most folks don't do it. Now, you said that this process was really difficult. So, what made it difficult for you? And what would you tell your 25-year-old self about that process? Because I'm sure now, like, this is light work for you. You do it all the time.
So here's the thing, I essentially didn't have a me. I have now taken myself through this process 3 times. And the reason why I never want anyone to have to do it alone is because it is so hard to do it by yourself. And it's not of course not that it can't be done by yourself, but it's sort of like it's not meant to be done alone in the sense that it can be so incredible to have people who are with you along that journey, whether they're fellow visionaries or whether somebody's guiding you through a visioning process, or like you said, your coach taking you through that exercise. When you are able to clarify your vision surrounded by others, it helps you see things that you couldn't see on your own. It helps you, verbally. So many of the people that I work with, and I'm sure you do too, are verbal processors. And
Yes.
so when you're on your own, you can write, you can prompt yourself, you can ask questions, you can get in there, but there's nothing like, at least for me, there's nothing like being able to talk it out and have someone ask you questions and draw out and draw out and draw out. So it was really challenging for me because I was like, oh, I am not letting myself out of this freaking apartment until it is done.
Oh.
But like I got so much farther to go. So it was just that process of sort of feeling like I was going it alone and also feeling that total determination because I knew how worth it was. But yes, that is the whole reason why I do what I do is because I never want to have that alone in the apartment moment for other people because they don't have to. They don't have to.
Oh my goodness. I feel it like as you're talking, my stomach hurts. And my stomach hurts because I know for some of the things on my own 10x vision, I am deathly afraid to say them out loud, to say them in bigger rooms, to say them in a group program, let alone like one on one is scary enough for me. There's some key moments to my 10x vision that I'm just like, oh my God. But I do believe that there is a power in claiming it and a power in saying it out loud. Because there's only so much that we can do from journaling, podcasting, talking to friends. Like we are an information overload. I love and hate the December, probably like December 15th through like February 1 time. Anyone who is in behavioral science, coaching, any of that realm, it is all about visioning and processing. And you can download 1,800 guides on how to do it yourself. So I would love for you just to talk a little bit about like the difference between like the solo processing and how that helps take it out of the mental loop when you're with someone. Like, what is the difference? Because I think that there's so much information. I'm like, okay, great. Like, I heard Lois, like, she sounds great, but why would I do that when I can get this free 99 YouTube podcast combine and have 35 million questions that I could do it?
1000%. So I think there's so many different elements to this. One is that so often people they either start before they stop or they stop before they start. So we've all done it, right? You look at all the guides, you bookmark all the things, you download the PDFs into the file that gathers dust, proverbial dust, and you never do them because it's daunting.
Mhm.
It is exciting and it's scary. So it's one thing to have that initial, oh, yes, vision. I'm hearing about it. Like you said, it's sort of become this buzzword. Okay, everyone says I need one. Okay, great. Let me get one. You download all the resources. And then the idea of like actually asking yourself those questions and being like, I'm just gonna, important but not urgent that. Just gonna do that
Yes.
another time. I'm gonna wait till I can rent myself a cabin in the woods and like have the candle. And then, okay, when does that happen, right? So that's really the stop before we even start. You can have all the resources in the world, but if you don't have that compelling reason, if you don't have that commitment mechanism, then it makes it really, really difficult to go forward. And so
Mhm.
actually, my for my current 5-year vision, I started doing this in cohorts because I was having trouble getting myself to start.
Ooh.
And I was like, I need a commitment mechanism. I need a start date. I need a time. I need a weekly cadence. Otherwise, like, are you kidding me? I have 8 million other things to do that are way easier. Even if they're
Yes.
challenging, they're way easier to do than this long-term thinking, this like big. So that's one piece of it. And then the other is that people stop right after they start because they get into it. And then without a guide, again, you can kind of start to loop and not feel like you're getting anywhere new, but just sort of like in the echo chamber of your own thoughts. And so that can either feel frustrating or it can feel like I'm just writing all the things I already knew, or like, or now I'm getting into comparisonitis and I'm shitting all over myself. And it's just kind of like taking me actually back further down the spiral than getting me out of it.
Mhm.
So all those things can happen, I think, when you have, like you said, all these resources, but there isn't sort of a container built around them for you to be able to go into and know I'm carving out this visionary time and space for myself, and this is what that actually looks like. And the other piece of that is when we have to put that time box around the visioning process because it could be a never-ending story. I mean,
Absolutely.
you could be part of the visioning process is sealing your vision. And
Mhm.
I have so many clients who are like, but could I just another? And I'm like, this is why. This is why.
So how
Because
long does it take? How much long do you give people to like, okay, till you, I love that seal the vision. So how long do they have before they have to seal it?
so the process that I take people through is 13 weeks. Now,
Okay.
I do have people come to Madrid and we do it over 3 days. So we
Okay.
condense that 13 weeks, we condense it into 3 days. But
Okay.
for 13 steps, whatever you want to call it. But essentially over those 13 weeks, people are going through over the 13 weeks, they're doing how they got here, where they are now, and then where they're headed. And then once they write their first draft, they're deconstructing it, really, really fleshing out and refining and deep diving into each of those facets. So, deep diving into personal, deep diving into professional, financial, relational, spiritual, if that resonates with them. If not, obviously, like, we leave that part out. But they go through that entire process and I'm giving tons of feedback. And that's the other thing when you have somebody, like you said, your coach in your program, who isn't just encouraging you, but challenging you. You
Hmm.
really want a guide who is going to be like, ooh, yes, let's dig deeper. Oh, you said this? Stop. Hold up. Don't keep going. We need to go back to that. Like, let's really, really, really go deeper on that. Again, those are some things that would be easy for you to write about or talk about and just sort of gloss over because you're like, yeah, or like, I don't really want to say that out loud. So I'm just going to kind of gloss over it. And that coach, that person in your corner is going to be like, hold the phone, stop. There's something there. So having that outside guide can be incredibly helpful in that. But I'll let's say they get tons and tons of feedback and then they do their sort of final set of revisions and edits. And then in the 12th week is when they seal their
Ooh.
vision.
So this process, it's 3 days if you want to go fast. I'm
Yes.
that person. I'd be like, no,
Yes.
no, 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 we ain't doing 13 weeks. I need 3 days. That
100%.
is very much
Yes.
my personality, but it could be done 13 weeks. That's 3 months.
Yeah.
That's a really, oh my goodness. I don't think that the average person, like when you do this exercise, like I remember the coach that we had last week, he ended the call early so that we could do it. He's like, I want you to do
Yeah.
it right now. People do it in 15 minutes. They
Yep.
don't spend that much time. Now, one of the things that I love when I was reading more and more about your work is that you don't start by jumping right into the future. Because I think that when you do the ideal day exercise, when you do the 10x versus 2x, like even if you do a very brief, like, this is what happened last year, this is what happened this year, it's the look back, the reflection is fairly short. So, why do you have your clients? I'm assuming if they got 12 weeks, they're spending a good amount of time digging into the why of how they got where they are before they go forward. Why is that important?
Oh, yes. Oh my goodness. There is so much context that we want to bring to the surface. And all of that context, I mean, one of the coolest things is later on in the process, so many people say, I feel like I've been leaving breadcrumbs for myself this whole time, and only now am I ready to pick them up. So that's what s- allowing people to say, look, we are not here to on day one say, okay, so what's your 3 to 5 year vision? Go.
Hmm.
And for some, it's like you said, sometimes people love that. They're like, give me 15 minutes, amazing, let me do it, done, awesome. For some people, they feel like, I don't even know what to start, or even I don't even know where to start, or let me just like write down what I think I should write down, or what I've been for the past several years have thought that I wanted. And so what we want to do is really zoom out from that and also really give people this container to say, this is a time for you to really dive deep and explore and either validate, yes, that is really truly what I want, not what I think I'm supposed to want, not what my past self
Hmm.
wanted, not what my family, friends, colleagues, society wants, or I actually want something different. Or I actually, what I'm doing now is amazing. And I actually want to not feel like I have to do something bigger, sexier, more, and just
Mm.
actually realize like, oh, this chapter is really celebrating the fact that I'm continuing and maintaining things, which normally we don't give ourselves any credit for whatsoever. So anyway, I'm
Absolutely
getting
not.
far away from your original question, so I want to come back to that. So, anyway, when we are going back and thinking about the past, we don't want to stay stuck there. We don't want to dwell there. We want to do it in a really structured way. But when we do that, when we start to connect the dots and see those common threads, it allows every single step to build on the next. So then, when we are starting to get into your own set of core values and clarifying those decision-making filters, we go into that with so much more context because we understand how you got to where you are
Understood.
rather than kind of going into it cold. And so it's like there's so much richness and so much like, ooh, so much there that it's like this gold mine of information and understanding that we want to really mine. And then that is going to continue to be something that we sort of echo back to as we realize like that is so wild. Here in week 11, we're talking back to something that we talked about in week 1. And so that's
Interesting.
the beautiful piece about it. And I think too, when you have that chance in a really structured way to look at your past. And I know you've talked about in your podcast, you have been to therapy before. I've been to therapy before.
Hmm.
I love my Spanish therapists. Like so cool to be receiving therapy in Spanish is like very therapeutic in itself. But so there's something that's so important about unstructured processing or
Yeah.
processing that it's more verbal, it's more just sort of like go with the flow and stream of consciousness and let's go where it takes us. And there's another sort of structured processing where you really understand that this step is then going to build towards the next one in the visioning process itself. So it's all in service of something else. It's not just sort of like processing for processing sake, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the things that comes to mind with the looking back, and I know this to be true for myself, so I can be open and honest there, in that what happens when when they're really doing this look back and they're like, damn it, the problem is me. Like I don't want to say intentionally, but kind of like made this mistake and repeated it time and time again. And I am not where I want to be because of me. Like I am the only reason why. And I say it very rough, I guess, for some folks that may hear that, because that's how I talk to myself. I'm going to be honest. Like, Kim, like you knew better. You put yourself in that situation and now you got to like eat what you made. And if you don't like how it tastes, girl, this was your fault. So I'm like, how do you kind of get folks out of that, literally like beating themselves down? And when they see that, 'cause I think there's some elements of our life. I know for me, definitely for like relationships, I see that. I've seen myself playing smaller in my business in certain areas. And it's like I can see very specific moments when I reflect of, ooh, you chose B instead of A. It's not that A wasn't an option. B was safer, B was comfortable. Like B didn't have as much exposure for you. B wouldn't let people see you fail if you did fail. So you did B instead of giving yourself the opportunity to do A.
Yes, and yes. And I really love what you said about this idea of sort of recognizing and beating yourself up, because part of the visioning process is also allowing yourself to recognize those things without needing to rationalize or justify them. So I
Mm.
actually think sometimes in our society, everything can be like, it's okay. No, like the broken path leads straight to your or whatever. Like one door closes,
Yes.
five more open, and oh, like kind of over validating or over making it okay. When sometimes I think as individuals, we want to say, I can handle it if it was a bad choice. I don't want you to tell me that it was actually a good choice and I made the decision, but I learned from it and everything was a learning opportunity. I want to just be like, yeah, that was a pretty bad decision. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm okay with that. And so I think there's something really powerful about part of the process is very much that is sort of surfacing those things where we're like, that wasn't great. That wasn't great. It's not about regret. It's not about would I do it differently or not. It's just about being able to look in the mirror and just say, that stuff happened. That was me. And I don't need to explain it to anyone, and no one is going to try to make it all better because I don't need that, and that's not the point. And so I think when you're just allowed to have those things be part of what happened because we're human beings, of course we're going to make mistakes. Of course we're going to all of that. It's actually kind of a relief instead of having to go through that cycle of no, it's okay. That was actually a great choice. When you're like, no, you don't have to. It wasn't. And that's fine. And I'm gonna make bad choices again in the future at some points because I'm human. So that part of it is actually really critical. And I think again, it's sort of when you add structure and context to that question, it helps it just go from this spiral and loop of, can't believe I did that. Oh my, are you kidding? I cannot, makes me cringe thinking about it, to, okay, yeah, that was 100% part of this trajectory. It was like, it was just as formative as the other parts.
It sounds like it's almost a process of like acknowledgement and release. It's like this is
Absolutely.
what happened, but if
Yeah.
we want to get to the vision, and I think that's the part I think that could be exciting, kind of putting those two things together. Like we need to acknowledge it, but now that you've acknowledged it, if you don't want to repeat it, we have to release it so that we can have space for the larger vision for ourselves. Like one of the I always love to give dating analogies for folks. I feel like dating analogies make everything really, really clear to folks a lot of times because most of us have gone through a period of dating. And I always tell folks there's a lot of methodologies around like having a roster and having like this whole cohort of men and then men or women, and you figure it out that, okay, now I'm ready to like date for the one. But I always tell folks, at least in my experience, that there comes a time when you have to be able to release to call in. Like, and I'm a big believer in like, you can't be chatting with your ex and expect the one to come. Because if that person is really the one, they don't want your ex sniffing around. So that has to be closed. Like you have to close that door completely. No calling, no texting, no checking in, no happy birthday, no saying hi to his mama. Like none of that matters anymore because all of that is like energetic. So you are saving all of that energy, even by having that box of keepsakes, of gifts, and Valentine's Day cards. Like having that, I feel like in your home. I've done a little work on like feng shui, like all of that is energy. And you literally can't have that energy. Like I know in feng shui, when I was dating years ago in like 2014, I remember the feng shui person said you always have to make sure you can get off your bed on both sides. And I
Yes.
had a studio apartment.
100%.
Yes, I'm like, I
Yes.
had a studio apartment. And I was like, how am I going to like refit? It's easier with the bed. You can't get off on one side. And it's just me. They're like, no, but if you want partnership, and this was after a divorce for me, it's like you need to create the space for someone to get off on both sides. Long tangent, but I think in terms of like in dating, I had to release all those things to make space. And I feel like when it comes to your vision, you have to like, yes, that happened. Yes, you've made mistakes, but now I need to release it to move forward. So I'd love to kind of chat about. So I think visioning work is great. Obviously, I do it for myself, but how do we turn that into taking steps? Like, what is, because I think a lot of folks, especially high achievers, is like, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's why they feel like they can do it by themselves. It's because I'm not going to pay someone to help me write something pretty. I need the something pretty to be my real life. So, where does that change happen in vision to action?
So it's a re and also I want to go back. I always say like envisioning, there's no such thing as a tangent. So I love the feng shui conversation. It's so relevant and
Yes.
totally fits in with everything we're talking about. So for this idea of when does vision switch into action? When I think of visioning. It's built for real life. It is not sort of off in the clouds vision, like where we're getting lost over here and we're sort of disconnected with what's going on over our day to day. Because I also always say, okay, these 13 weeks or 3 days or whatever are also layered on top of 13 weeks of your life. Like new stuff is
Yeah.
happening every week, new things are changing. And so all of that is part of the context. So anyway, I always think of like, when you go to the eye doctor and they have the little thing and they like click the little things and they're like, this
Yeah.
one or this one, this one. And it kind of gets clearer and clearer and clearer. So every week it's sort of like that. You're adding another lens of clarity. So it's not like, and again, this is, I'm talking about my process, but for anybody who does any kind of visioning work, with some kind of process, you don't have to sort of wait till the end until you have clarity. You start gaining clarity right away. And that's super important. And if you're listening and you're looking for a process, just make sure that you're going to start getting that clarity right away, that you don't have to get to some finish line before it unlocks the clarity. That should be happening from day one. So, and even when people commit to visioning, even before they begin, they start to get a little more intentional, feel a little more proactive
Hmm.
because they know they're going to do it. And so that alone is that step. They've sought out that commitment mechanism and now they have it in place. So once you start the process and you start to gain clarity, just like you said, when we look at our past, we're looking at those patterns, the ones that we want to release and also the ones that we want to take with us, or the ones that we want to take with us, but shuffle around a little or change up, or the ones that we're not even sure we want to bring into our next chapter, but we want to open ourselves up to them. And so I mean, as soon as you start getting clarity on those patterns, you start to see them more in your everyday life and things start to shift. Then we go into core. So the action starts to happen immediately. But when we're talking about roadmap, that's another piece of it. So one of the things that can be most challenging for people, especially high achievers, especially
Hmm.
doers, especially people who are incredible at executing, is they're like, how am I gonna do this? When do we get there? And I always say, like, I promise you we will get there, but we've got to release the how for now.
Got it.
Gotta release the how for now. We will get there. And the only way they can truly release it is by being able to really trust that we will actually get there. Right? If you don't, then you're never going to really be able to do that. So once we have the vision in place, then there's a super structured process to work backwards from that vision and create the roadmap to get there. And that roadmap isn't a check the box, make a bunch of smart goals. It's more, okay, based on this literal and figurative season, what is really going on in your world, and what parts of your vision do you want to bring to life in this time frame? And so when you are in a season where things are really challenging, great, your vision is your life raft. Like how do we lean on your vision and use it as one of the elements of your support system to say, okay, I knew this was going to happen. I talked about it in my vision, how there were going to be challenges, and I talked about some of the ways that I'd be sort of approaching that. This is the time for me to really bring that to life. And then that kind of goes to the background and you bring something else to the foreground and you bring that to life. So it goes from sort of feeling like I have a vision to now it's all just back to check this box and do that thing to, ooh, I have this living, breathing vision. And again, knowing the context of what I have going on in this next part of my life, this next 90 days, this next 6 months, this next year, this next month, these are the parts that I really want to activate.
Mm. I love that. And I also think that, like, whenever I do the visioning exercise, I find myself unintentionally, but again, unintentional, but intentionally doing things just a little different. So I love that there is the how component. And note to all high achievers, including myself, like don't release the how while you're doing the vision, blah, blah, blah. I don't like that, but I but I understand it. I overstand it. I just don't like it like in my brain. It's like I just hired a new trainer recently. And I was like, okay, yeah, so I know I'm gonna do this 3 times a week. And I know I gotta do my macros. Can you just tell me like when I should be able to reach the goals? Like I know that I am the issue. I know that I have to do the work, but, and I've been down the road a million times. Can you tell me your expert opinion of when you think, like, can I have a hot married girl summer by my birthday in July if I listen and I do it right? Because there is like a comfort in knowing that, okay, if I do everything, but that's another thing that we kind of have to release sometimes. I tell folks that like short-term goals are like your milestones, like your little like checkpoints, but long-term goals are a moving target. Because, like you just said, as you're living life, things happen. And I always tell the story of when I was in career services, I spent about 10 plus years, like almost 10 years, building my career in higher education and career services. All I wanted to do was become a director of career services. And I was interviewing and interviewing and interviewing. And I was top two and not number one, like Beyonce. And I heard that age old, that don't, people need to stop saying this. So if you're listening, stop saying this to candidates. Stop saying, if there were two roles, I would have just hired both of you. Like, you think it helps, but really and truly, thank God this is happening on the phone, because I'd want to hit you if we were in real life. Because it does not make people feel better at all. Because the reality is, you pick someone who wasn't me, and I wanted it to be me. And that happened to me time and time and time again. And then, make a long story short, I ended up moving into corporate HR, and I was a director of global diversity talent acquisition strategy at a Fortune 100 company in financial services. That move would have never happened if I hadn't gotten rejected multiple times, if I hadn't gone through all the processes, all the magical connections that happened that led me to that point. And that ultimately changed my career for the better in a multitude of ways. It changed my business. It changed so many things about who I am, my knowledge, my expertise, and what I do today happened because I did not stay in higher ed. It would not have happened if I stayed in higher ed. So it was such a blessing. But I had worked for so long, literally tailored my higher ed career over the span of 10 years to make sure I was ready. But I know now I probably did it a little too fast, because I'm not sure how familiar you are with higher education, but people stay in higher ed forever. So when you get to a certain level, every like associate director, senior associate director, director, it's like, oh, how long have you been here? 15 years, 20 years, 25, 30. Plus, that is not unheard of. So you have to move, but there's always, I was young. I was, how old? I'm 38. This was, when was this? I was still I was in early 30s. Everybody else who is competing for the jobs was at least 45 plus, if not in their 50s. And I got to the point, I remember talking to my therapist, where it's like, I'm not old enough. I haven't been on this earth long enough. So yes, they love me. However, you can get me with 10 years, or you can get this person with 15, with 20. And it was no shade, but it's like, I literally needed to be older. I needed to be an auntie, and I wasn't an auntie yet. But it all worked out. And I think the visioning part, I tell folks, it's important to have that vision, because it allowed me to work and to manifest and do all these great things. But I had to release, like, it's not a bad thing that the vision didn't come true. It shifted. And I'm assuming that is the catalyst for, let me fine tune my vision again. If a major shift happens, that's the time where you have to be like, ooh, I need to go back and revisit it and update some things, because now the future looks different.
So I love what you talked about, because so much of the visioning process is asking ourselves, what are those longer term things? If it's a 5-year
Mhm.
vision, what are those things that are like, that is a year 5 thing. Like, I am intentionally deprioritizing it right now
Yes.
because I actually have to release the pressure to have, I don't need to have that all figured out right now. I'm laying the foundation. But when we know what that looks like, then we can work backwards and understand, okay, what are the foundations I want and need to be laying right now? And we also get to come back and ask ourselves, is this the vehicle? Is this the vehicle? Is this the vehicle to helping me get where I want to go? Is this the vehicle to helping me get to my definition of success at that specific point in the future? And so when I work with people who are in a role or in a geographic location, or like they're like, this isn't exactly what I want, this isn't exactly where I need to be, then we get to go back and say like, okay, well, is it the vehicle? And if it is the vehicle, at least for the time being, then it can really shift things, because instead of feeling stagnant or like, oh, I can't believe I'm in this place, it's like, I'm in a vehicle. This is getting me somewhere. And so it totally changes. If you, again, seeing yourself as where I am is going to help me lay the foundation for where I'm going is very different than just I'm not where I want to be.
That makes sense. So I honestly could talk to you forever, but I have one more question. And then I want to go to like the closing and wrap up with you, because there's one question that I want to ask you, honestly, on behalf of like any person who is not clear on what they want to be known for. Because I think a lot of high achievers, they're great. They've been working hard. I talk about it in my book. I talk about being like a Jack or Jill of all trades, because you're just good. Like, you can figure it out. It does not matter if you've never done it before. It does not matter if you don't know the industry. It doesn't matter whatever the thing is that you don't have. People know that you can if given the opportunity because your brain works and your brain can see force. I always say my husband's like that. He's a very strong operations brain. And sometimes I always tell him, like, honey, like, you just have to have patience with people. Because not only is he operationally really, really strong and can see all the good, the bad, the ugly, the downfall, he's also good at math. So he adds like the math and the percentages on there. And I'm like, honey, like literally when you talk to me at home with patients in our PJs, you put the math together and I'm over here like, is that quadratic equation? Is that pi? Is that seventh grade? Wait, who was that, Mr. Kaiser? I know I did bad in that. I think I got grounded because I got a C. Like I'm over here. You already have the answer and you know the answer. And he can just like see it, but not everybody like sees it that way. And that's how I think high functioning folks, high achievers, we can always figure it out. But a lot of times when folks come to me, like we talk a lot about visibility, like what is the thing that you want to be known for? Like who is it that you want people to automatically see you and know that you are? And in the era of being that girl, I was like, you can be that girl, but we need to have some definitions around it. It's not just looking pretty on Instagram. I need it to be fine-tuned. So I would love to hear a little bit, even if they had like, if there was like a 60-second coaching experience with you for people who are like I'm doing good, like I'm great, like I make good money, but I don't know what my thing is. Like, I don't know what like the end. What is the end? What do you do with that?
Okay, so I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet. So I want to come back to the way that I think about vision, the way that I learned about it at that organization I talked about at the beginning, as a vision is your definition of success at a specific point in the future. So the very first thing that I would ask them is, what's the specific point in the future? Are we talking that thing within the next year, within the next 3 years? Because that's really gonna like if you're like in 5 years I want to be this, or in 2 years, those are really different roadmaps.
Yes.
Those are real different roadmaps. So first, and I think also sometimes it helps people release the pressure gauge a little because they're realizing, okay, this doesn't have to be it forever. This is just the next chapter. So first thing, what time frame are we talking about? And then what is the definition of success? Is that you want to be known because externally you want to be known so that you can get further in your career, or is it because you have a business and you want to attract the right clients, or is it because internally you want to feel like that to have that clarity and confidence for yourself, or is it a mix of all of them? But I would really be super curious and excited to understand like what that's all about and what we want it for. So
Got it.
what is the definition of success of having that visibility? If you had the visibility that you wanted, what would be the evidence? How would we know that you had it by the time you wanted it by? If I
I
walked
love
in a
that
room,
question.
yeah,
I want to pause there just because I think
yeah.
that people don't tune into that. I asked that as a coach too. Like, how would you know that things are different? So I'm like, I just have to pause. So if you're listening, like this is the point that where you need to stop the podcast and write this question down. How would you know that life is different? Well, who would you be? What would you have? What would other people say to you? I think that's the difference between where you are and where you'd like to be is like how what would you feel? And everybody's indicator for that feeling is different. Sometimes it can be very superficial. I'm like, I always tell folks as someone who has built a personal brand online for a long time, it's like I wanted to be on Forbes. I wanted to be on
Totally.
Forbes. Because when you look on like famous people's things, it's always like Forbes, all the things. But fun fact, and no shade to Forbes, because I've been on Forbes multiple times, so I feel accomplished, like check mark. However, I've gotten the least amount of traffic and referrals from being featured on Forbes, least amount of clients. So what it does from a visibility perspective, I think it gives like outside consumers a check mark for you. However, I've taught people that like what matters more? Do you want that external check? Do you want essentially the vanity metric? Like Instagram followers, like do you want that vanity or do you want cash money in your account? Or do you want clients? Or do you want the job, the title? What is the thing? Because that could also change over time. Because once I got that, but then I understood, oh, nothing changed. To date, I got featured. I wrote 2 articles, I believe, for Blavity. I get clients from that, the article that I wrote. Now, Blavity in comparison to Forbes, Blavity is massive now too. But back then it wasn't as big as it is now. But that it was completely different. When I did things for Essence or Business Insider, CNN, Wall Street Journal to date has been like the best feature I've ever had. But it was never on my scale of what I want in my vision. So that's, I think, some of the magic and the things that can happen. But for me, when I thought about success, I realized after I had to change it, I would know it's different when something else happened, not just getting the thing, What is the result of the thing? Not only how did it feel to me, and did it give me whatever it was I thought was supposed to happen? Because those are two different things sometimes.
Totally. And I want to bring it back to specifically what you said about the magazines, being
Mhm.
featured, because I had a client who, in his first draft of his vision, he talked about wanting to be in one of like the 30 under 30 things, right?
Yes.
And so then we peeled back the layers and said, okay, is that the non-negotiable? Is that the definition of success? Or is there a kernel of a definition within there? Is that the want and the need is actually something different? And so he realized for him, okay, it wasn't, yes, he still wanted the 30 under 30 in this specific publication, but what he really wanted was X, Y, and Z. And so when we shifted the definition of success to that, then when he refined his vision, we put that was the sentence that he was talking about. So two things happened. First of all, he did end up getting in the 30 under 30 that he wanted anyway. He also ended up getting featured in a ton of other publications, like you said, that ended up doing actually more for his business. But instead of every one of those feeling like, yeah, but it's not the 30 under 30 yet. Yeah, but it's not.
Yeah.
He kept being like, in my vision, it says I've been featured in local publications in my, or whatever, local,
Yeah.
regional. And so he actually got to feel like, I am living my vision. I am living my vision. I am living my vision instead of disappointed, disappointed, disappointed until one specific goal that actually had a goalkeeper. Like,
Because some of
you
our
you
goals
could
do
want
have
30 under
goalkeepers.
30 and you could visualize it and you could want, but there's 30 other people could get it instead of you. So when you think of that too, the goals that you have, which ones have goalkeepers, and be conscious of
Yeah.
that too, because sometimes we can kind of step it back and say, okay, that one has a goalkeeper, but if we look at the kernel of the non-negotiable within that, that one doesn't. That one is something that you can control. And
Oh
again,
my
it's not to say
gosh.
that you're going to forget the other things and like still go for the Forbes, go for the third, do it all. But that is a really like, ooh, super juicy place for us to go is to peel back the layers on that kernel.
The nugget I'm taking from that is like when you think about your goals and you think about your vision, you don't want all of them to have a goalkeeper because it could be a very unhealthy place to be because you are not in control of any of that. So it's important that your goals are more well-rounded and more comprehensive. And there is not that. I love that. Oh my goodness. I'm going to use that just so you know.
Please do.
I'll
Please
attribute it
do.
to you. Like you can't have a goalkeeper for it. Even when I think about speaking, like when I teach folks about speaking publicly, I tell folks like you can create your own rooms to speak to. Like just because people are shutting doors and not accepting you to speak at XYZ, I teach my clients in the visibility shift program that I have that like just because that door is being shut, how can we create a room for you? I think that's the one of the switches with speaking goals that I do for my clients, and that so many times we're waiting to get chosen for this, and this, but what can we do in the waiting? What can we do to create our own rooms, to create our own opportunity, create our own experience? Because sometimes people need to see you out there doing. We can't just wait for the
Right.
big one to happen because all those folks who got selected for that have been doing, and people can see it, and that helps attract it to you. Oh my gosh, I could talk. I keep on saying that I could talk to you forever, but I'm not
I
going
know,
to.
me too. Me
I'm going
too.
to pause. I want to pause here. And I just want to say, do you have any final advice for anyone listening today? Anyone listening who is very intrigued by the process of visioning, maybe hasn't put a vision together, or maybe they did and they're like, girl, I don't even know where that is. Like, what advice would you give that person today?
Okay, so what I would say is that the concept of visioning is like an accordion. You can expand it or you can contract it. So if you are listening to this and you're thinking, wow, all that sure sounds fine and well to be thinking about 5 years, 3 years in the future, but I don't even know what's going to happen in the next 5 days, let alone the next 5 hours. Like this feels very irrelevant to me. And very often I just need to focus on getting through this round of interviews or this career transition or this merger or whatever. Know that you can take that tool of visioning, ask yourself, what is my definition of success for this specific point in the future? Keep that in your back pocket. You can use it today. You can use it for a hard conversation. You can use it for an interview. You can use it now. And then when you are ready to go beyond the day to day, seek out some sort of structure, some sort of process, some sort of container that will create that commitment mechanism for you because you are human. This is the sort of epitome of important but not urgent. And so unless you have that commitment mechanism, it can be really, really difficult to dig in. And that's not because of any fault of your own or any lack of ability or skill. It's just because naturally, like this stuff is hard to do unless we have a guide, a process, that mechanism to help us actually begin.
In fact, well, thank you so much, Lois. Like this conversation has been so valuable to me. I know to folks who are listening, I'm going to give this to my clients to listen to too on the importance of creating a vision for yourself. So as next steps, where can anyone who's listening find you, connect with you, and learn more about your work?
So my website, I'm so excited. I'm finally relaunching my website after so many years. So truenorthvisionaries.com has everything, but then I'm also on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and LinkedIn. And I've got my next visionary cohort coming up really soon, and I'm incredibly excited to bring together these visionaries who are really ready to do this work.
Perfect. All of that will be linked in the show notes for you. Again, thank you. Until next time, everyone, may your next move be your very best move.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Your Next Move podcast. If this episode has helped you get clearer on how to get seen as a leader, speak with influence, and step into rooms where you belong, please share it with a colleague or friend who needs to hear it too. And if you're ready to develop a speaker brand that opens doors and attracts the right opportunities, head to kimberlybonline.com/TVS-waitlist to explore how we can work together. Until next time.